What's the worst date you ever had? It was with an undertaker's assistant. He'd circle every topic of conversation back to corpses. Me, so. Do you know what you're gonna order? Him, well I was thinking the steak. But I had eaten steak when we got the river guy in. And now it makes me feel queasy. I ended up leaving after half an hour. I told my date, before we went out, that I was divorced. Just as a heads up. She pried for more information and I tell her my wife had an affair. She starts joking about it, then asks to see a picture of my ex and the guy she left me for. Then she called her affair partner cute. Oh, and she spent the other part of the date calling me fat. In college, I hit it off with a girl and agreed to go on a first date to a school hockey game. When I met her there, I realized I had forgotten my wallet. So I had to borrow $5 from her to pay for my ticket. Not a great start. And I could tell I had dug myself an early hole. Then, once we sat down, we realized that neither of us liked hockey at all. I have no idea why we agreed to meet there. But we were both totally uninterested in the game. So we started talking about other things we were into. And I mentioned that I liked board games. She said, "You sound like my grandma." At that point it was clear that neither of us were into this at all. But it was the first period of a hockey game that she had paid $10 whole for, and neither of us felt right leaving. We sat there and stonily watched the rest of the game. Afterwards, we said, "Let's hang out sometime," and then never messaged each other again. Then, a few semesters later, my friend called me up all excited about a new girl he was dating. He wanted me to come to a get-together at his apartment and meet her. I walk in. And of course he's sitting on the couch with his arm around the very same hockey-hating girl. I immediately grabbed my wallet, handed her $5, and said, "Thank God. I've been looking for you for 2 years." She laughed. And things went alright after that. Met her at a bar. She ordered food, but didn't eat it, since it looked disgusting. It looked fine. So we left to go to a different restaurant, and on the walk there, she kept ducking and glancing at the sky, like she was being attacked by bats. She hardly said anything over the whole date. It was like pulling teeth to get her to talk about herself. At the second restaurant she took forever ordering, and again didn't eat, because the food looked disgusting, emailing about the date afterwards. She admitted that she was high on ice, which I guess is some kind of meth. He was over an hour late. No text or call. And when he finally showed up, his excuse was, "Sorry I'm late. My mom had to take a shit." Met a guy at a concert who asked me out to dinner the next weekend. Said we'd go to a restaurant halfway between his place and mine. Gives me the address, which I printed out on MapQuest BC. This was before GPS was normal on phones or in cars. I get there, and it's an apartment building. Call him to say I think he gave me the wrong address, and he said, "Nope, you're driving." Takes me to an Applebee's, because they have the cheapest happy hour, he said. We have one drink, and he eats potato wedges by himself. When I drove him back, he asked me where my overpass bag was. I said I'm not staying the night and thanks for the beverage. He took my keys out of my ignition and told me to go upstairs. I told him, if he doesn't give me my keys back, I will start screaming and call the cops. He threw them in the front seat as he got out, telling me I'm missing out on hot tub time. I thankfully never saw him again. I had a date send her drink back several times and eventually had our server bring out all of the ingredients in separate glasses so that she could mix it herself the right way. What's worse is we were both in the service industry at the time. I went to a New Year's Eve party with a guy I had been chatting with for months. When we get there, his friends asks him where his girlfriend is, and they were not referring to me. I went out for a smoke at that point and he went after, saying she was boring and he was gonna break up with her. I didn't hang out with him for the rest of the night. I guess I should thank him, because I hooked up with the party host instead, and we've been together for 7 years. A guy approached me at a coffee shop and we ended up hitting it off and talking all night. About a week later we had our first real date at my place, so I could cook him dinner. I lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment at the time and the bathroom door was right next to the kitchen. He excused himself before dinner and proceeded to take the loudest and what I presume to be the most massive shit this universe has ever seen. The sounds of the toilet carnage still echo in my nightmares. I of course didn't mention that I heard the whole event and we went about our evening. After dinner we got into my bed so we could watch a movie. 30 minutes into it, I needed to use the restroom. So I got out of the bed to reveal that I had unknowingly started my period and left a noticeable pool of blood where I was sitting. He helped me change the sheets. Anyway, we've been married a year now and he still takes the nastiest dumps known to mankind. Edit. Wow. Thank you for the awards and sweet comments. She started talking about her life story from childhood to that day, year by year, with every single traumatic story and emotions. That was our first ever date, and she didn't even let me speak for that duration. I was like, oh okay, she is now talking about high school, 6 more years left. Hold tight. I've posted my worst on this question before, so I'll post a runner-up now. Dating at an older age is pretty difficult to begin with. This was when I was about 47. And an acquaintance I hadn't known long said she had the perfect guy for me. He had seen me at a sports event with my acquaintance, and I agreed to meet him for coffee. After asking a few questions about what he did, karate instructor and sports coach, and finding out he was about my age. Showed up on the date. And he had very red eyes. He told me right away he was very stoned. This was before we were a legal state. I'm not anti-weed by any means, but showing up stoned was the first red flag. He informed me he hadn't worked in several years, and his coaching days were 10 years in the past. He had been attempting, in his 40s, to become a pro dirt bike rider, living with friends while he was pursuing his dream, and blaming the industry for his lack of success. I started asking gentle questions just to get the full scope of the train wreck that was before me. He asked if I wanted to go dirt bike riding with him, and I politely declined. The bill came for our coffee and pastries, and he sheepishly said he couldn't afford it, but would pay me back on our next date, and mentioned he was a good friend of the guy my acquaintance was dating. I asked who the guy was, and immediately recognized the name. The guy had been in the news as he just got out of prison for involuntary manslaughter. I offered to treat with no obligation and gently shut down the idea of another date. I was going to ask my acquaintance, what the actual fuck were you thinking? But learning who she was dating was a complete answer in itself. Was told we were going to dinner and then shopping. I drove to the town, 1 hour each way, cause he didn't have a license. He directed me, didn't know my way around at all, to Burger King. Okay, I'll work with it. Standing in line, a worker accidentally leans on a packet of ranch. It breaks open and shoots at me, right on the front of my nicest shirt. Profound apologizing commences. I ended up paying for dinner too. Then we went to Walmart, where his mom worked, so he could get a discount. Didn't buy anything. Drive home he starts apologizing out of nowhere. I thought it was because of the bad date, until the smell hits me. He passed gas, and I had to legit pull over and roll the windows down a while. Edit. To address a few frequent questions, no more official dates with him. But we did continue to see each other several months. This was high school, and I was older than him. Got set up on a blind date once between mutual friends. She shows up to the restaurant already a little tipsy, orders multiple appetizers, and only takes like 1 or 2 bites from each one. Then she proceeds to order 3 or 4 more drinks, and is visibly drunk at this point. She gets up and says she's going to the bathroom and staggers off. About 15 to 20 minutes go by, so I try to call her several times but no answer. Finally I decide to pay the check and just leave. About 2 hours later I'm sitting at home, and I get a call from an unknown number. It's the police department. She was picked up on a DUI on her way home, after she ditched me, and gave the cops my number to see if I could go bail her out. Oh boy, finally my time to shine. I talked to a girl on Tinder 8 years ago. She got drunk and told me to come over because her and friends were playing strip poker. I was on overnight duty, so sadly I could not partake. 30 minutes later I receive a picture on my phone that I couldn't even make out. I handed my phone to my roommate and asked if he could figure it out. He says, dude, that's a butthole. It surely was. She had taken a picture of her butthole from at measly 0.5 inches away, and it was so close up I could barely tell what it was. I thought to myself, if this is how she leads, the rest has to be great. Spoiler alert, was wrong. She tells me we should finally meet next weekend. At Applebee's. I meet her there, and she looks beat. Like she had just run 5 triathlons and been awake for a week straight. Not 3 minutes into meeting and sitting down she says she has to use the restroom. She doesn't come back for 30 minimum plus. The waiter comes up and says he has seen her here multiple times and she has been known to shoot up heroin in the bathroom and pass out. I'm very not into this at this point, but for her own safety I ask if a waitress could peek in the bathroom and see if she is okay. She was not. She odd and died, so that was a thing. TLDR, my Tinder date showed me her butthole then odd and died at Applebee's. So I don't have many. Because I'd only been swiping for a few months before I met someone. But maybe I'm also naive enough to have some funny things happy already. Like the time I thought the bot I was chatting with was just someone who was super distracted. Anyway. Matched with a cute girl. She likes to climb. We have good chat. Great. Let's go and do some top rope and hang out. But she doesn't have a car. So I need to pick her up. 30 minutes off route. I'm not thrilled, but whatever. Meet her and, well, it's not her, or it is her from the profile. But maybe from 5 to 8 years and a kid ago. I'm tempted to call it off, but I'm too much of a softie. And she says she made cookies. I love cookies. We head off to the small local cliff. We arrive. Walk the 10-minute approach. The conversation is still fine, but I'm wary now. I resolve to just have a nice time and have some fun. And just learn from the experience. She's perfectly nice, but I'm seeing red flags. At the crag she says she borrowed her friend's shoes and isn't sure they'll fit. Same with the harness. Oh. Well they do fit. Yay. So I rig the anchor and we start climbing on a nice 5, 6, easy, for a warm up. Except that she can't climb. Fine. Okay. Whatever. We are still chatting as she works on the off-ground move. And then just bursts into tears. Turns out that it's her sister's dating profile and that's who she borrowed the stuff from. And that her husband doesn't know she's on dating apps. I find all of this out amid tears, and so does everyone else there who can overheat it. Some very awkward talk therapy later. I drop her back at her house. Is it her house? Is it her neighbor's house? So that hubby doesn't see. And she leaves me the cookies as an apology. And they were store bought. Had a girl openly flirt with the bartender in front of me. She says she wasn't. But handing him her own phone and asking for his contact info in front of her date seems like it to me. I, 35F, met a guy, 41, on Bumble. Had dinner plans to go to a wing joint. I asked if we were still on a few hours prior. He says yep, just gonna shower and jerk off. I joked and said something like, whoa there mister. Perf. TMI. Which apparently offended him greatly. As he blew me off for our date. When I asked WTF after the fact. He said he thought I was mad. So he spent the evening anger cleaning. And told me don't ever call me a perv again. But asked if I'd want to meet the next day. Why I said yes. Is anyone's guess. We meet at Tim Hortons for coffee. He starts by joking that my soon-to-be ex-husband is going to show up to beat him up. He says this repeatedly. Even after I explain the ex is out with his girlfriend. And continues to eyeball the windows nervously. Then, after sitting down with our coffee, he asks if I want to go to his car to get some gum. No. Thank you. A few minutes later, he asks again. And then again a few minutes later. Dude. If you want some gum. Go get it. I'll be right here. He harumphs. Does not get the gum. And we continue talking. Where the conversation devolves into him ranting about how Hollywood is shoving biracial couples down his throat. I ask if he has any big plans for the evening. He states he's going to go home and jerk off. At least he has a hobby. We walk to the parking lot after the fact. And he asks if he can kiss me. Now, I had just got out of a 14-year, affection-starved relationship. And hadn't kissed anyone but my ex in that time. So, stupid me. Said yes. He kisses me, then grabs my arm in a death grip and drags me to his car as I struggle to get away. Thankfully, his dumbass hadn't cleared the seat before his abduction attempt. So as he's trying to manage holding on to me while clearing off his seat, I manage to wrench my arm free, run to my car, and get the hell out of there. Literally shit myself on a date once. Wasn't technically a date, but the guy had a farm. He took me to see the animals. Feed. ECT. I walked away for a few minutes and overtrusted a fart. I just looked at him and asked if he could please take me back to my car, wanted to know why, and I said, because I pooped in my pants. Guy had a super nice truck and made me sit on my feet all the way back to my vehicle. We actually ended up dating for 2ish years. And somehow me shitting myself on the first date was the end of all jokes. We went to dinner and he started chatting up the waitress. Like interrupting me every time the waitress came over and talking to her for a few minutes instead. After a couple times I just pulled my phone out and started scrolling through Reddit, and he complained when he noticed I was on my phone. Cue lecture about my generation. He was like 6 years older than me. Ike. Then he got mad when I wouldn't suck his dick in the parking lot. I ended up going back inside the restaurant and calling a friend to pick me up. Dude's car was still sitting there when I left. Fuck you, Jason. Showed up to a Tinder date where we agreed, but she wasn't there. Texted and she said they were around the corner. Come to find her, mid-20s divorced socialite, and her friend, mid-40s salesman, had been drinking all day and were proper shit-faced. Proceeded to join them at the table, where she proceeded to talk about the married guy at the next table and kept walking by and dropping things so she could bend over in front of him. Then some racist talk and some cocaine news, them not me. And then they decided, mercifully, to ditch me because I was no fun.